1 in 6 Irish adults has very low levels of literacy. Even more have low levels of numeracy. At these levels, a person could have problems with understanding the instructions on medicines, filling in an application form, adding up a bill, or helping children with homework. The National Adult Literacy Agency is a charity that works to ensure people with literacy and numeracy difficulties have access to educational opportunities and can fully take part in society. Since we were set up in 1980, we have supported many people return to education to improve their reading, writing and math skills. Very often this has life-changing benefits. Not only do they learn the technical skills of reading and writing, but they gain the confidence to learn other new skills. And it has a positive ripple effect in their families, community and society. Today, to mark the 40th anniversary of the National Adult Literacy Agency, we are launching Voices, a wonderful new collection of short stories and essays edited by one of Ireland's best-known authors, Patricia Scanlon, and published by New Island. And what better way to mark our 40th anniversary than to hear some of the stories from Voices.
I left school, I couldn't tell the time. I think I just about maybe knew how to write my name. I came from a family of 15. Once we became the age of 13, you were taken out of school, you had to get a job to bring money home. Because I couldn't read and write, I would have lost out on a lot of jobs. Good jobs, with good money. I've missed out on so much of my life. All the lovely, wonderful things I could have done. I didn't go for certain jobs, like waitressing, because I wouldn't have been able to write what the people wanted. The job I was working in, health and safety, started taking over. When I picked up a bottle of cleaning product with an X on, it was like Chinese writing or some other a foreign language to me. And that would have put the fear of God in me. I was afraid not for me, but for the other people. Well, when I was 47, the redundancy package came up. So I said, right, this is my chance. So in the meantime, I did see ads on the TV. And I said, okay, I'll ring that number. And then they sent me out all the information. And then I thought, well, it's only down the road. So I'll go in and I'll chat to somebody. When I left school, I never have dreamed of writing to anybody. Now I actually do write letters. And actually people think it's the maddest thing. And they say, oh my God, I haven't got a letter in 10 years. Going back to education has opened up the world, not a world, the world. You know, you can see everything so different. It's like being blind and then being able to see again.
I had a dream about you last night. At the sound of Juliet's voice, Sarah's shoulders tightened with tension. You had a dream about me, Aunt Juliet? Joe asked. He was eating cereal. He put down his spoon. What dream? I dreamed of a snow wolf. Juliet leaned closer to the little boy. Her voice dropped low. The snow wolf was running and leaping through deep white snow, glad to be alive. Where was I? Joe asked. You were the snow wolf. So now I know, a snow wolf is your spirit animal. And Joe, it is an incredibly powerful spirit animal. It means you have an appetite for freedom. Sarah wished there was a polite way to tell someone who sat in your kitchen and lived in your house to shut up. Not someone though, Juliet. Juliet was her husband Richard's younger sister. She had dark purple hair and the word fearless tattooed on the inside of her arm. Juliet had come to live with them 6 months ago, after yet another failed relationship. What is a spirit animal? Joe asked. Sarah closed the lunchbox with a snap. Joe, finish your breakfast. You need to hurry for school, she said. Your spirit animal is the shape of your soul, Juliet said. It is your guide and helper in this world, but also in the other world. Joe, come on. Sarah felt irritated by Juliet's silly talk, so her voice was snappish. Joe looked up at her too fast and said, what's wrong? Nothing, Sarah said. Nothing's wrong, but we're going to be late. Okay, Joe said. What is your spirit animal? He asked Juliet. A black panther, Juliet said. Of course it is, muttered Sarah to herself. No way was it going to be a mouse or a sparrow. She went upstairs. Richard was tying his tie. She's supposed to be looking for a job, Sarah said, but all she ever does is meditate and cook horrible desserts made with coconut sugar. I know, he said, I buy the ingredients. They cost a fortune. So stop buying them. She can buy her own. We're not making her pay rent because she's your sister and you feel sorry for her. Sarah, she can't afford to. You know she can't, Richard said. but it's been months. She doesn't show signs of ever leaving. Give her time. She's so good with Joe. He loves having her here. She fills his head with nonsense, Sarah said. She talks to him about his aura, the healing power of the mind, how he can do anything if he visualizes it. But he likes it. Maybe, but it's not good for him. He should be outside playing with other children, not in with her, painting pictures of his aura. Back downstairs, Sarah picked up Joe's coat. "We're off," she called from the front door. She wondered would Juliet clear away the breakfast things, or leave them there for Sarah to do when she got back from work. In the car on the way to school, Sarah tried to prepare Joe for the day ahead. This was what his teacher, Miss Ryan, had suggested she do at their last meeting. She said it would help Joe to settle. "You have your hurl and helmet," Sarah said. "It's hurling practice today." "Yes." "And you're reading in the morning before little break." "Okay." The way he didn't complain hurt Sarah more than if he had protested. She felt she was driving a small, scared prisoner who had learned not to thrash or fuss. Every day when she arrived at pickup time, he was waiting for her, his bag on his shoulders. Around him, other children played, not Joe. "Let's go," he always said as soon as he saw her. "Juliet says my spirit animal is a snow wolf," Joe said now, proudly. "And hers is a black panther. What's yours?" "I have no idea," Sarah said. "I don't really believe in that stuff." "But if it is real," he persisted, "what would you be?" "I don't know, maybe a chicken?" "You wouldn't be a chicken," he said, offended on her behalf. "Maybe Juliet knows what you are." "It's just stories," she said. "Juliet doesn't know." At the gate, she kissed him goodbye. "I love you, darling. See you later. Have a good day." "See you later." He never said he loved her at the drop-offs. Sarah watched him walk across the playground alone. She wanted to run after him, grab the bag from his back and say, "Not today. Let's go somewhere else, just us." She wanted to hold him tight, to be the person who protected him, not the person who dropped him every morning to a school he hated. How much longer would they give it, she wondered as she drove on to work. Another month, a year, and then what? "He'll settle," Richard had said after the first meeting with Joe's teacher, Miss Ryan, a few months into junior infants. That was when Miss Ryan said they should have Joe assessed, in case he had additional needs. "He just needs time," Richard had said. "He's young for his age." Sarah had agreed. "He is, nearly the youngest in the class." But she knew that it was not just his youth that set Joe apart. It was something else, something that was in him, that made the other children want to hurt him, not help him. "Let's go," Joe said, as soon as he saw Sarah that afternoon. But before they could leave, Miss Ryan came over to them. "Can I speak to you?" she asked. She put a hand on Sarah's arm to stop her from leaving. "Yes, of course," Sarah said. Her heart sank. "Joe, wait here for me." The classroom smelled of chalk and feet and disinfectant. "There was an incident during hurling practice," Miss Ryan said. "Joe hit another boy with his hurl." "I see." Sarah waited. Experience had taught her that it was better to wait. "I did not see how it began," Miss Ryan continued. She was speaking quickly. "Joe said that the other boy started the fight, but I asked the other children, and they said that the other boy did not do anything physical." No, Sarah thought, he wouldn't have to. Not at this stage. The groundwork had been so well laid by months of teasing. "Joe would not hit anyone without good reason," Sarah said. "Even then, he would have to be provoked a lot." "I'm sure that is true," Miss Ryan said. "But at this school, we have a policy of no tolerance for hitting." "Of course you do," thought Sarah. "You have a policy for anything easy. But where is your policy for protecting a child who finds every day in your care confusing and lonely and now dangerous?" "I was wondering," Miss Ryan continued, "if you have thought any more about an assessment." Her voice was full of concern, but Sarah did not believe in her concern. "We have not," Sarah said. "Perhaps you should," Miss Ryan said. Sarah knew that Miss Ryan wanted an answer that would make her own life easier. a piece of paper with a label that would tell her what to do with Joe. "We will consider it," Sarah said. And they would have to, she knew, even though she did not believe that giving Miss Ryan the label she was looking for would make her a better teacher to Sarah's son. Outside, Sarah took Joe's hand on the way to the car. The playground was empty, so he let her. She wondered would he ask what Miss Ryan had wanted. He did not. He stared out the window and said nothing until they reached the house. "What day is it today?" he asked then. "Tuesday," Sarah said. "Why?" He did not answer, but she knew he was calculating in his head. If today is Tuesday, then tomorrow is Wednesday, then it's Thursday and then Friday and then the weekend. Her heart ached at how much he wished the weeks away. They went into the kitchen where Juliet was baking. She had cleared the breakfast bowls, but there was cocoa powder on the pale wooden countertops, and some of those dried red berries that she ate that stuck to her teeth. "I'm making chia seed brownies," she said to both of them. "Do you want to help?" she asked Joe. "Yes, please," he said. "Can I stir the bowl?" She pulled a stool out for him and lifted him onto it. "Of course you can. It's hard work because of the chia seeds, but they have loads of protein to make you strong." Sarah watched them. Joe's head was bent over the bowl and he stirred the thick mixture with a wooden spoon. The mixture looked disgusting, Sarah thought. Juliet put her hand over Joe's to help him. "That is very good, Joe," Juliet said. And Sarah, just as she had known that the concern in Miss Ryan's voice was fake, heard that the love in Juliet's voice was real. "Juliet, tell me more about Joe's spirit animal," Sarah said. "A snow wolf? What does that mean?" "It's a really powerful sign," Juliet said. Joe stopped stirring and turned his head to look at Juliet. "Go on," said Sarah, pulling out a stool. "Tell me all about it."
I had no level of writing, I had no level of reading. Once you were a good worker and you picked up some skills, which I did, you could move from one job to the other without a problem. The snags really started coming into it when we'd say the safe pass came in first off. I've left jobs because of that. The inability to be able to read, people take it wicked for granted. It signified to me embarrassment and a weakness I had. I believe it was God's hand that brought me down here. It was like saying, this part is finished with. This part you're starting with. It was a hard thing to do, and it's a hard thing for anyone to do. But once you've walked in through those doors, it's like a family down here. Within 9 months, I was reading books. I discovered a bit of imagination and a flair for writing. I'm in a writers group. We meet up every now and then, and you can just sit there and listen, or you can contribute if you want to. I've done my first test for the heat test qualification, so I can fit fireplace and stove. You have to have it to go out in the field and fit. And I sat on that, and I done it. Oh, the feeling of pride, and that's all through this. It's not only because I learned how to read and write, but the confidence that gave me to do it.
The other city is just across the bay from this one, and the people come over here often enough. They are taller and paler than us, and they dress in black. They smile all the time, and they do not say much. They just stare at us. We tend to act as if they're not there. Just today I was sitting with Joe discussing a better supply chain for paper cups. Our company makes paper cups, when I noticed a group of visitors from the other city in the corner. I stopped talking about flowcharts for a moment. "Why do they stare?" I whispered. Joe, who clearly had not been listening to my presentation, looked up from his notes drowsily. "Just ignore them," he said. And I did. That is generally what we do with the people from the other city. Every day we pass them by on the street or in the office without comment. We try not to notice them as we brush our teeth and go to bed. They never get in the way, to be fair. Even in my small one-bedroom flat, I can move around them just fine. I'm not incurious. Sometimes as I lie in bed, I can feel their eyes on me in the darkness, and I feel like asking them a question. The question sits on the tip of my tongue, but I never ask it. There is a reason we don't ask them questions, but I cannot remember what it is. Here's what I know. The other city has always been there. It's a bit brighter, a bit taller, and a bit cleaner than our city. I seem to remember the other city being there when I was a child, and I remember the people from the other city quietly watching at all the key points in my life. At my childhood dinner table, at birthday parties, at school fun days, when I clumsily lost my virginity, when I started my first job, when I designed my first paper cup, when I devised a supply chain for paper cups with Joe. At each instance, the other city shone from across the bay, and its people, with their long, white, smiling faces, looked on. I suppose I liked them being there. I suppose I'd miss them if they were gone. I'm really not incurious. I'm not. I do wonder why anyone would build two cities so close together. I wonder why the people from the other city come here, but we never go there. I wonder why, when I see old maps at the subway station, my city is not on a bay at all, but looks straight out on open water. In those maps, there is no other city. I sometimes wonder about other cities that are not the other city. There are names in my head: Paris, London, New York, Dublin. I've never heard those names, and yet I know them in my head. Life is just so busy. When I think about learning about the other city, I feel overwhelmed by the detail of the day and the hustle and bustle of the street. I suppose I need some work-life balance. I feel tired all the time, to tell you the truth. When I am not working, all I want to do is sleep. All I want to do is sleep, I say to Joe, as we work on improving the supply chain for paper cups. Were we always this tired? Joe looks up from his notebook. He looks sleepy too. Sometimes he says, "We were always this tired." And sometimes he says, "We are more tired than we were before." The gist of it is that Joe is not particularly interested in this line of conversation. But whatever he says, the people from the other city lean in to listen. They listen eagerly with their long faces and their long teeth, and their eyes get rounder, and I feel wearier still. Here is something I do not remember, something I strongly do not remember. I do not remember a day when I and everyone else were shocked into stillness by a shining city looming up from nothing and nowhere across the sea. I do not remember dropping my coffee and bun on the ground and screaming. I do not remember Joe's jaw opening and closing again. I do not remember him calling for his mother. I do not remember a young woman gripping onto my arm with fear. I do not remember a baby crying and then everyone crying. I do not remember my legs getting weak as we all stared at the other city and the smiling white-faced strangers walked slowly into the crowd. I do not remember that at all, thank God.
My experience of education before I came here was going to school for 2 or 3 days before confirmation, 2 or 3 weeks before First Holy Communion, and nothing after that. I came from a family of 12. None of my parents could read nor write. We were in caravans and we actually came from the side road where we were in tents. If you wanted a letter wrote, you'd have to go and ask a settled person or ask another member of cousins that could read and write to write a letter for you. It was very embarrassing to go and ask somebody else to put on paper what you wanted to do yourself. I was a mother of a daughter of 6 when I started getting into education, and it was just through a course to help her with her homework because I wanted to give her more than I ever had in life. I never got that opportunity. So then I was invited along through Family Learn to do a Parent Plus programme, and I'd done level 5 in Lisdoonvarna 2 year, and then I went back 3 years after and I'd done level 6, and I'm in the one job for the last 10 years. I've learned so much in that 10 years, I've done so much in that 10 years, but I haven't done it alone, do you understand? I've done that through family learning, I've done it through the community that I'm in. I know people say health is your wealth, but I actually don't think so. I think education is the best nutrient that a person can have.
On the landing stage at Chapo, we waited for the early water bus. It was dark still and people sat on benches or stood by the walls, not a word out of anyone. I put my tired head against my grandmother's arm and looked out at the Black River. I was 12 years old then, pretending to be 9. And I was dressed as a boy, a cousin I had never met. He lived with my grandmother for a few years before he died of the spring virus. I had been with my grandmother for a week by then and found her house with its many rooms grim and lonely. The road where she lived was full of dark and often empty houses, the gardens wild and made out of shadows, like a place you might come across in a dream. This was just after the end of the Fourth War and my first time to go into the city. I was not of the city, but one of the mall people. I found the city people odd and shifty, the way they never looked you in the eye. My grandmother said that was because the small screens had all been taken away. They were learning how to look each other in the face again. My grandmother had studied my face against the face of the dead boy on the red identity card. She held the mane of my hair in one hand, her other hand cut and chopped behind me. It sounded like some small animal was trying to eat its way into my head. She said, "They won't let you next or near the clinic, but there's a doctor in a place called East Wall we can try. Do you people have doctors at all?" She wanted to know everything about our lives in the mall. She always called us you people. But I didn't know how to explain our lives to her, how to say our ceilings are high and made out of glass. You can see the black sky at night, sometimes the stars. You can hear the rain as you go to sleep. There is always the sound of voices. We have our own ways, our own diseases. When we die, we die. Then we are buried behind the old yellow car park. On the outside, my grandmother was always calm. A sturdy shape, a wide black face, a bland and cat-like eye. She schooled me in her nighttime kitchen and woke me early and schooled me all over again. You are a boy now, that's the main thing. You are a boy and you feel well. If they find out that you're sick, that's it. It's all over. And do not say a word, okay? Even if you hear me tell a lie. I know, you told me. Good girl. Good boy. On the morning we went for the water bus, she asked me about my mother. It was dark and cold as we went down her road, but all I felt was the heat. My grandmother wore a heavy coat and a red fluffy hat. I wore the dead boy's clothes. And how is she anyway, your mother? A bit lonely, I think. Pity she didn't think of that before she ran off with that. Not a word all this time, and now? Lonely, ha! Lonely indeed. At the gate out of the estate, my grandmother pressed a bell. An old cop popped up in the hut and sleepy-eyed slid the hatch open. She opened the top of a brown paper bag and out came the breath of warm buns. The cop shyly dipped his hand in. Then she asked him about his sore leg and said, "Isn't it great now to think that the war is over?" He took out a yellow bun. "Yes," he said, "until the next one comes along." The old cop grinned and then looked at me and said, "Jesus, is he after getting terrible tall?" He pulled out a sheet of paper, then bang, 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 stamped it all over. Then he gave it to my grandmother. The cop on the landing stage was young. Outside on the bridge, 2 more of them walked up and down, 2 long guns slung on their backs. There were words on a wall that warned about false papers and permits. There was a picture of a man, his hand cuffed behind his back. The cop took his time. I heard the stamp of his feet as he went up and down the line looking at papers. Behind him the sound of lapping water and the creak, creak of big ropes. Now and then he looked into a bag, or he made someone stand up so he could search their pockets. An old man on the far side of my grandmother gave a loud tut. A few places ahead of us was a man who looked like Tarek, the man who took me to my grandmother's house. He must have been from Syria. A girl was with him. She was about my age, my real age. The girl stared at me as if she knew who I was. When the cop came near, my grandmother gave me a nudge with her elbow. I stood up and went to the end of the jetty as if I only wanted to look out for the water bus. Across the way, I saw the twists of smoke from campfires. Upriver, the lamps of boats bobbed all over the inky water. I tried to work out where my home was from here. Downriver anyway, and to the west on the old motorway. I thought of all the other malls along the old M50 and the people who lived in them, as we did on the outskirts of the city. Outskirts for outcasts, as my father used to say. When I turned back to look at my grandmother, the cop was beside her. He was holding her cards like a fan in his hand. My grandmother was speaking too fast, too loud. "His mother is dead," she said. "His father killed in the war, and yes, I am his grandmother. That's my permit there, and that one is his card, and the pink one is for..." The cop looked at her. "I know what they are," he said. From the far side of the landing stage, I could almost feel her fear in my hand. The cop gave the papers and cards back to her, went into the office and closed the door, and then the old man beside my grandmother blew his nose. I heard the grind and groan of the water bus, then a blast of light and the sound of chains. 2 men in yellow Macs helped my grandmother along a ramp. I walked behind. Below deck, all the people from the landing stage began to sit down, and not a word out of any of them. I had never been this close to water. I had never been on any sort of a boat before, and so I asked to stay up on deck. "Too cold," she said. "Not for me." She took off her glove and put her hand on my forehead. 5 minutes to cool down and then back down here to me. The dark had gone out of the sky by now, leaving a soft dove-grey light over the river. The boat shoved through the water. Sometimes it stopped on the left bank, the next time it crossed at a slant to the right side. At every stop, the big ropes were thrown to a man at the dock. The gate on the boat was pushed open, and the men in yellow Macs helped people on and off. We passed under a bridge, and the river spread out between high walls. Way above the walls, I saw the dome of a mosque on one side and the peak of a church on the other. Above that again, a tall glass tower with cops moving around inside it. I heard the sounds of the city over the walls, but not who or what these sounds belonged to. When I came below deck again, something had changed. The old man was talking, and then another man and a woman, and now laughing. They were talking about the past, and I don't know why, but it seemed a bit odd to me. My grandmother started then, telling a story about when she was a girl. I had no idea what the story was about or why it was funny. It was not a past I knew or even cared about, but even so I wanted to hear it. I knew then that I didn't love my grandmother. I knew because for those few moments when everything and everyone had gathered about her story, I did love her. And when her story was over, I stopped loving her again. There was a map on the wall and I ran my eye along it. Parkgate, Joyce Bridge, Forecourts, Fishamble. There were others too, and then it stopped at East Wall. I did not know where my grandmother was taking me, or if she would stay with me when we got there, or dump me at the door. I wasn't even sure if I trusted her at all. I could smell her skin and her hair. I could smell the vanilla of the buns in her brown bag. It made me feel hungry and sick at the same time.
I left school at just over 13 years of age. It wasn't a nice place at all. You dreaded going into school. But when I went back to adult education, it was like turning on a light bulb. When I went to going back just when I'd done a one-to-one, the first day I went, I remember it well, and I said, Jesus, why am I doing this? Why am I putting myself through this? And I put my hand on the door, opened the door, went in, and the tutor, he put his hand out, was a gentleman, and he shook hands with me and welcomed me. How are you doing, Mike? And sit down and have a chat. And that completely changed. I never dreamt it would be like that. And you got the sensational appetite to learn more, you wanted to do more. So anyone that's thinking of going back to adult education, it will change your life, like it changed my life. It opened up a new world to me. I'm a volunteer. I feel it rewarding. I wouldn't have been fit to be a full volunteer and answer the phones and be on the reception unless I had gone back to literacy and have the skills to use the pen work on the computer or whatever. I'm more confident in myself. I'm not afraid to do things. And I go into a restaurant, I lift up a menu, I can read the menu, and say, I want this, I want that, I want to do, do you know what I mean? I can do that.
This childhood memory is so slight that I ask myself why I recall it so well. I think it is because it was the moment when I sensed that one day I would become a writer. However, I was too young back then to understand what I was feeling. But I remember the day so clearly. I can still smell the floor polish on the shining lino. I can still feel the grains of sand stuck between my bare toes when I crossed the big bedroom. I can still feel warm summer air coming in the open window. I am upstairs in Mrs. Butler's guest house, a mile outside Courtown in Wexford. It is my family's summer holiday in 1969. Flies swarm under trees near the house. Crickets chirp from the long grass. Age 10, I sit alone on one of 3 beds in a large back bedroom. Here at night, my parents sleep in one bed and my sister in another. My older brother and I share the 3rd bed. My father is a sailor. He only enjoys nights at home with his family in Finglas if his ship is loading in Dublin port. This is what makes summer holidays so special. We are all together. The summer of 1969 is not our first holiday at Mrs. Butler's, but it will be our last. Some months later, days before Christmas, my mother dies. Childhood changes for me forever. But as a child, sitting alone upstairs in that guest house, there is no hint of sorrow to come. Mrs. Butler's house feels huge. The steps to her kitchen are out of bounds. Other families also stay there. Our Cork family seem posh because they have a car parked on the gravel. The boy whose father owns the car dances to a song, Viva Bobby Jones, playing on the radio. At night, other music fills the night air in Courtown. At dusk, in the swelling lights of a fairground, a song by the speakers blares from loudspeakers. It is called "The Carnival is Over." For years afterwards, I cannot listen to it. It brings back too many memories. The funfair smells of chips and hot dogs. Children run in the shadows, faces covered in candy floss. I walk among booths where men try to win prizes. Teenage girls whirl overhead, screaming in the swing chairs that spin around. Mrs. Butler is kindly, but I'm slightly scared of her. Mary, her gentle, elderly helper, carries jugs of milk from a nearby farm. The boy from Cork goes to play pitch and putt with his father. I tag along excitedly. On the first tee, his father asks me if I wish to hit one shot. Golf is new to me. I raise the club, nervous and excited. A man comes running. He shouts that I have not paid. My club stops inches from the ball. I am afraid to hit it. The Cork father does not offer to pay for me. My fingers long to have just once struck a golf ball. Beside Mrs. Butler's house is a field with a pond. I play alone there. Loud crickets sing everywhere. I cannot spy them despite spending hours searching. A donkey watches me with patient eyes. Flies buzz around his face. My brother and the Cork boy kick football on the gravel. Local children stand at Mrs. Butler's gate to watch them like they are film stars. My mother comes to the front door. She calls us in for dinner. There are desserts I'm afraid to taste. They look like the frog spawn in the pond. The adults at the table talk about gangs of Hell's Angels seen in nearby seaside towns. A mile away in the dusk, Courtown throbs with the sins I have yet to discover. After my mother dies, there are no more family holidays. A quarter century passes before I visit Courttown again. By then, I am a father myself. Driving my young sons to a hotel in Rosslare, I decided to show them Mrs. Butler's. As a child, I was here so often that I should be able to find it, but I spend an hour circling small roads. I pass her house 3 times before I realize I am back again as an adult outside it. Standing at the rusting padlock gate, I need to ask the man next door if this is the right house. It looks so tiny, closed down and empty. Mrs. Butler is long dead. I cannot believe this is the same garden where I played. The room where we ate our meals looks so small. I look down the road. In my mind's eye, I can see the stooped figure of Mary carrying milk. I can see my family leave this house, setting off for another day on Courttown Beach. I remember us waiting for that magic moment of catching our first glimpse of the sea. I can see us walking home from the fun fair at night. The road is so small that my car blocks it. I do not climb the wall to peer into the empty rooms. Instead, I close my eyes. In my mind, I walk again up those stairs with the long week stretching ahead. I remember that moment when my family went downstairs and left me alone. Later, I will understand the feelings that came over me as I sat there. I will recognize it as the moment when poems enter my head. But at 10 years old, I am just puzzled by this feeling of wanting to stop time, to remember everything about that moment. The summer air blowing through the window, the drone of crickets, the sand between my toes. I remember sitting there, tired and happy. I remember pressing my forehead against the window. I know I will never forget that room. Then I hear my brother call me from the stairs. I turn and run happily down to my family. None of us know what joys and sorrows are to come.